Hey guys, and welcome to Game 3 out of 100 of the Mack vs. Machine series, where I'll be playing 100 games of Scrabble against the top bot on the Woogles.io platform, HastyBot. The first two games were quite interesting and both went in my favor, so we're off to a nice 2-0 start, and hopefully we'll be able to keep the momentum up tonight in Game 3. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to be first in this game, and I've started off with a nice rack here where we'll definitely be bingoing. I see Adenoid and Radioed to start things off as possible 7s. I think I slightly prefer Radioed just because Adenoid gives back an S-hook, and there doesn't really seem to be a compelling reason to do that. On the other hand, Adenoid is nice since it puts consonants next to both of the double letter scores, whereas if I play Radioed, I'll be putting vowels next to them, which isn't ideal since it allows him to play pretty easily there for 30 or 40 points possibly if he has a power tile. So it's sort of a trade-off between putting the vowels next to the double letter scores and not giving back an S-hook. I think I actually prefer Adenoid in this case. Giving back the S-hook is not ideal since I'm taking a lead, but at the same time, I'll be playing all 7 tiles. I have a good chance to draw the S, and it's not that likely to stay open for super long because overlap plays on column G or column I will tend to close it. So I don't think it's that big a long-term liability. So I'm going to go ahead and play Adenoid. And he has bingoed back immediately with Gentler. So I have not the best rack here. A lot of vowels, the VU combo is never good. Don't see any great plays immediately. Maybe something like Voodoo through this D. It only scores 9 points, but it's pretty ideal for my rack. AEH is quite a solid leave. Especially there's an open N as a floater, which it'll work very well with. Also hits this H1 spot like with something like Hade or Haim pretty easily depending on what I draw. I don't really see a way to score a ton of points here. I could play something like Oh Ho. I guess that would probably be my highest scoring or close to my highest scoring play here. It's 21, but the leave of AEUV is pretty scary. So I'd rather sacrifice a couple points and clean up my rack as much as possible. There probably are overlap plays available here too, using the V to make Dev. Maybe something like Ave, but the UOHO is absolutely dreadful as a leave, so I don't like that at all. I'm going to go ahead and play Voodoo here. Okay, so we have a decent rack, a little bit vowel heavy, especially with the Y, but looks a lot better than it did before. Fa does not take an S, so that is actually not something I'm able to play or have to worry about. But I definitely do have to worry about this column K he just opened, which is quite dangerous for double doubles. I could play something like Hay or maybe even Haze there, which is a lot of points. If I'm going to do that, probably better off playing Yaz just to get rid of an extra vowel and score a couple more points. It is 47, which is going to be hard to beat. I do think the S is worth spending if I play there. It's 12 more points. Normally they say S's are worth about 8 in a vacuum. In this position, the S doesn't seem that useful since as I mentioned before, Fa doesn't take an S. The Adenoid's hook I was talking about earlier is now blocked. So I think Yaz is okay. It seems like too many points to pass up. I guess it's worth looking at plays like Ya up here also, which scores the same as Yeah. EIOS is not a bad leave. It's a little vowel heavy, but this K column is a little bit scary. So I think taking some points and blocking it is okay here. So I'm going to go ahead and play Yaz. And, well, the bad news is he's bingoed with Locator, but the good news is had I not blocked that spot, it would have scored close to 100 as opposed to 78. So my instinct was definitely correct in going there. And as for our play, we've picked up the Q, which is of course never a good thing, especially without a U. I'd love to have an A for Fakir, but unfortunately, or excuse me, an F for Fakir, but unfortunately that's not possible. I might be forced to play QI here, either next to Locator or Gentler, since I really do need to get rid of that Q ASAP. I probably have to play it here just because it is so many more points. Of course, I don't love giving back the column N if he has an I, especially not holding an I myself, but I think 8 is a little bit too much to pass up. And if he does play on column N, he'll probably open up some threats on column O, which might be quite a headache for him in the long run to deal with. So I don't mind that, just given I'll be playing with a deficit, and having some long-term volatility isn't a bad thing. So I'll go ahead and play QI. And he does indeed play OI over there. So now, sort of what I was talking about before, this QIS opening is going to kind of be a thorn in his side. It's really not easy to block other than by dropping one tile in the corner, unless he has an S. So he's going to either have to leave it open or sacrifice a good amount of points or equity to block it, which was kind of exactly what I was hoping for there. Our rack is decent, not quite a bingo rack, I don't think. We're close, but I'm not seeing anything that's going to play. First spot I'm drawn to is over here, since we do have a couple A's. Certainly I don't like map. AIOR is way too val heavy. Maybe Rami. That scores 31. AOP isn't great, but it's not terrible. So that's certainly an option. I also don't have to go there. I could play something like Paramo over here, which scores well. It scores 34. Turning over some more tiles is also not bad. There's 3 S's left, which are now a bit more valuable because of the QIS spot. And of course there's a blank unseen. So I don't mind this at all. I don't think shorter plays like Oprah here are worth it. I'm giving up 15 points, which is a lot, especially when I'm playing from a deficit. And AIMR is a good leave. I just don't think it's quite strong enough or quite likely enough to bingo to justify that kind of point sacrifice. So I'm definitely leaning towards Paramo at the moment. It's going to be hard to score any more than that. Rami scores even less. And it also, with Rami, it takes away some of these floaters for me, which might be useful in the future. Of course, Paramo does block this lane, which could be good for 7s on column M. But it's going to be hard for me to score anything without blocking some of my bingo lanes. So I think I'm going to go ahead and play Paramo here. I'm also not going to be down that much. I'll only be down about 20 in a tempo, so I'm not too concerned about having to leave as much as I can open at this point. The situation is certainly far from desperate. Okay, so he played FUB, which is a very aggressive play, setting up this line here with oft. Unfortunately, I don't have a way to deal with it or really use it right now. I have a decent rack, though. The Z is making it a little bit tough to bingo, but I could maybe score a bit with it. One option would be to blow up the rack and turn over a lot more tiles with something like Z brine to this E. It scores 38, which is pretty decent. Keeps a D, which is generally a pretty good tile, and of course opens a few more lanes and turns over a lot of tiles to go for the S's and maybe the blank. So that's a reasonable option. I don't really like Vise over here. 3 consonants is a little too heavy, and I feel like I'm just giving him back probably way too much with this E. That doesn't feel necessary at this point. I could play something like Bribe as well through this B. I'm not dying to keep the Z, though. It doesn't have a ton of potential, I don't think, on this board to score a lot of points. And I'd rather, with a blank and several S's unseen, I think I'd rather prioritize trying to to bingo than trying to score with the Z. A very aggressive option would be ads to set up an E. At a different score, I would almost certainly try this, but I feel like if I can tie the game with Z-Brine, I'd rather just do that. There's so many E's unseen, and if he has one, he could easily score a ton there and put the game almost out of reach, especially with a bingo. So I don't feel like I'm at a point where I need to do something like that. I'm going to go ahead and play Z-Brine, I think. Zing is another option, or maybe Zinged. But I feel like a leave of BERD on this board isn't necessarily doing me that much. I'd rather go for the S's, maybe even the T for oft is now a good tile, and I think I'm better off just scoring more points, opening it up a little more, and playing off more tiles. Okay, so he now has played Putto for 44, so he's used that spot. I have another pretty decent looking rack, but unfortunately I don't think it's going to quite bingo. I'm probably going to end up playing Cane here just because it's so many points. It is 43. DOR is a decent leave too, especially with all the E's unseen. It has good potential to materialize into a bingo rack. So I really like Cane here. I don't think I can score nearly that much in any other spot. So in the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and put that down. And he plays Easel, and we have indeed drawn the blank, which is, of course, a very welcome sight. Question is, do we have any bingos here? I don't see anything immediately. We almost have something like over wide or reavowed, over odd. Wondering if there's any nines from this ER, or to this ER. I don't see it. Over wider, of course, is not going to be good. So we probably want to just play off the letters in vow or something like that and try to bingo next turn is my guess. I don't see a great place to do that. I don't want to play something like Vol and only score 9. We are still down 40 points, so it would be nice to keep some scoring pressure on just so he can't run away with it or possibly outrun a bingo if I do hopefully draw one next turn. I'm not seeing any great places to score though, which is a bit frustrating. I don't have any tiles that will overlap the ER over here. I don't really have any plays from the E. Things like U are obviously terrible. DOV blank is not all that likely to materialize into a bingo. So I might end up actually having to play something like Va. Vower is also reasonable, but honestly I kind of like leaving that ER lane open for 9s. If I'm saving such a strong leave, I'm probably much more likely to hit it than he is. So I'm really not thrilled with the Va here by any means. I also need to watch my time. I think I'm going to go ahead and play it just for lack of finding any other good options. And he plays Jane for quite a lot of points. So this was a little bit of my fear with Va, is that he may be able to score enough to outrun me without a bingo. I'm going to quickly slap down Endorser here since I'm not seeing anything else and it does score a lot of points. And so now we have a very close game. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of time to process this fairly complex position. I think what's probably called for here is to drop an X here, just because it scores a decent amount of points, and I see 2 S's unseen. I definitely don't want to allow something like styling and QIS, so I think I need to do something like this. Okay, he plays Sig, and we have twinned, but it's not going to play. Oh, we have entwined. Never mind, we do have a bingo, and I don't think there's anything else he can bingo backwards, so I think this should be a win, unless I'm missing something, and it will be. He plays sliding, and now I do have 50 seconds to breathe, and hopefully find my best spot to play this Y. So I'm just going to sort of scan the board, go row by row. That's what I usually do when I have one tile. So I see I can obviously like play it here for 5, but hopefully I have something better. I see day for 7. I'm just periodically, of course, glancing at my clock to make sure I don't go over. I feel like day is probably the best. Year is 6. Yo is 5. Yeah, I don't think there's, it doesn't fit down here. I don't think there's anything else that will score that much. So I'm going to go ahead and play this. And another win for us, 465 to 399. Definitely some interesting turns there. The end, unfortunately, I fell into some time pressure again. I should try to play faster in future games. This seems to be a bit of a pattern the first couple of games here. So I'll try to play a little bit faster in the earlier stages going forward. So when we do have pre-end games like that, I can spend a little more time and go over those in some more detail. But I feel like overall this was a reasonably well played game. But let's go ahead and take a look at the analysis. So yeah, adenoid. There is avoided, which I didn't consider that much. It's also a reasonable option. It does still put this E next to the double, but that's a lot less dangerous than something like radioed in this spot, which I was looking at putting both vowels next to there. So avoided might actually be a little bit better than adenoid. It's a close call. Like I said, I don't really mind the S hook so much that early, since as we saw in the game, it's really not that likely to stay open in the long run. So here he bingos with gentler. Greenlit is another option. I think this decision for him is pretty much stylistic. Greenlit is a little bit more open. It exposes a few more floaters. Gentler will probably tend to be closed down a little bit more. Either one look perfectly fine to me. I did overlook hooved here, which is probably worth it. It's 26 points. And AU isn't great, but I don't think AEH is 17 points better. That seems like a little bit too much to give up. So yeah, I think I would not have played How. EOUV is pretty ugly. I did look in this spot, and I think I briefly saw How and dismissed it just because I didn't want to keep that imbalance to leave. But yeah, hooved is almost certainly worth it here, so that's a bit of an oversight. Yaz looks decent here. Ya was one of the main other plays I considered. If this K column weren't as dangerous, I'd maybe do that and hold on to my S. But given that again none of the S's were played at this point, and just wanting very much to take up this spot, I think Yaz is perfectly reasonable. So here he bingos. Yeah, QI seems forced. There's definitely no benefit to keeping the Q here. It's only going to hamper my ability to come back into this game. I'm almost never going to bingo, and depending on what I draw, I may even have a hard time unloading the Q. So I'm much better off getting rid of it here. Luckily for me, the bot had a dreadful rack in this position and couldn't really come up with anything better than playing OI, which does score but leaves a terrible leave of an F and 2 U's. Baramo looks pretty good here. Rami and Opa. Oh, I guess Opa also plays in this spot, but I'm not as much a fan of that either. It sets up an S hook with eras that I don't have. It does have some benefits of long-term openness, just because eras is actually very difficult to block. But I don't think, again, I'm not actually really down that much. So I think turning over some more tiles here, scoring a few more points. AIMR it's a nice leave, but it's nothing that special. So I think Paramo is quite reasonable. Here, I'm not at all surprised that the equity engine is recommending Zing. It does have one sort of sneaky benefit that I'm just realizing now of preserving the possibility of breezing next turn to extend Zing to the double word. That would score another 40 points if I'm able to draw that with one of the remaining 6 E's. So that's actually a cool benefit that I overlooked during the game, and I'm just noticing now. I think it's close whether it's worth going for that or just scoring a few more points and dumping more tiles. I'm not really sure something like breezing should really be my goal here, either short term or long term. There's a big bingo lane from QIS. There's a big bingo lane from off. There's just a lot of big scoring spots to go for on this board, and the way I'm going to go for that is not trying to play zing and then breezing. It's going to be dumping as many tiles as I can and reaching for the S, the T, the blanks. So I think Z-Brine is still reasonable, but it is worth at least considering zing more seriously because of the breezing possibility. So here putter looks very good for the bot. Yeah, Kame I think is pretty straightforward here. Plays like Dram also fit in that spot, but getting rid of the K is good for my bingo chances, and I'm scoring quite a few more points than my other options. Easel is a nice play by the bot to score quite a lot of points and take away that overlap spot I just created. I guess Ow is an option here I didn't really consider. I just wonder how much it actually hits with the unseen pool. It might hit a lot, because I see with an I can play Evildoer from this E, and with an N I can play Endeavor from the E. So that alone might actually make it worth it. It also has the benefit of blocking this lane on the right, and there are two S's unseen, so it might be nice if I'm sort of playing as if I'm gonna bingo the next turn to block that line proactively, so that I can have a more closed board once I do bingo and hopefully take a lead. So that's an interesting idea I didn't consider. Rolled is another pretty good option too. I don't like that as much though, because EVR does introduce a bit more variance and makes it a little bit less likely I'm gonna bingo next turn. Val is actually okay also. I didn't really look at this. I mostly just considered Vol, I think, and Vower in that spot. Val again does have the benefit of blocking this S bingo lane with QIS, so that's kind of nice. I'm not too worried about huge plays from the W, especially with only one A unseen. He's extremely unlikely to have something like Jawed or D-Wax or something there. So a Vow is probably perfectly fine too. I think playing fewer tiles though is probably better, since my main goal here is to bingo and maximize my chance of bingoing next turn. So I think I'm really liking Ow actually the more I look at it. I tend to be somewhat adverse to one tile fishes, probably more than I should. And yeah, in this case, just because I see the I and the N immediately, which are the most common tiles left in the pool that they both hit from the E, which he's not that likely to block, and I'm sure there's plenty of other tiles as well. Like even the E could play revolved through the V. The S of course is gonna hit somewhere. I have to imagine. But yeah, I think if I looked harder, there would actually be a lot more tiles here than I'm even giving credit for that'll play next turn. So Ow actually looks really strong. Not that Vol is a terrible play by any means, and I mean getting rid of the V is ordinarily nice, but I do of course then give myself another chance to pick up maybe the J or the Y, a tile that I really don't want that could make life difficult for me bingoing next turn. I am also scoring 6 less points immediately and leaving that O column open, which overall I don't think is a good thing for me, just because I'm not that likely to use it to bingo next turn, because I'd have to make my blank an S, and he has possibly one or both S's and lots of other good bingo tiles unseen. So I think overall, given I have plenty of other places to go with my blank, it benefits me to take away that spot from him and then bank on bingoing somewhere else. So I think this is actually a fairly significant mistake, just because of how much this rack hits. I unfortunately didn't realize in the game just how strong this was. I really should have given more thought to playing off a single tile. So not a great play there with Va, but it did work out. So here Endorser Retrodden is a very nice 9 through the DE, but of course Endorser is a significantly better play, given it scores 14 more points. Here, so the bot plays Deuce Side. This is actually kind of, now that we have time, this is kind of an interesting position to look at from the bot's perspective. So the bot is down 3 with 7 in the bag. It's kind of a mixed pull. You've got some good bingo tiles, the T's, the N, the S, 1 E, a few I's, and you've also got W, X, Y, so you've got some good scoring tiles. Unfortunately, the bot can't really score much here. Deuce-I is obviously nice to keep SING as a leave. He absolutely needs to get rid of at least one of his eyes. With 3 eyes unseen, he can't run the risk of drawing a third eye. So SIG is another possible option. Again, though, I don't really love keeping a U here, because if you have IIU on your rack, that's very difficult to work with. So I think it would be great to get rid of both the I and the U. Suing is interesting. The S is pretty valuable in this position, though, because of this spot with QIS. So I'm not sure I'm a big fan of getting rid of it to play suing. You could also play is, which I guess the main benefit of that would be that it takes that spot away from me, and I of course may have the S, or as it turned out in the game, it's an easy spot for me to drop my X for a decent score. So there, I think is has some merit too. I don't mind Deuce-I just to go for maximum flexibility, right? SING is pretty much as good a leave as you're gonna get. And leaving 4 in the bag is generally okay. I'd probably prefer leaving like 2 if I could, just because leaving 4 in the bag allows me to play off a couple tiles and score a good amount, and then leave him with a complex like 1 or 2 in the bag pre-endgame. So generally leaving like 2 in the bag is kind of ideal in the pre-endgame, maybe 3. So that's the one thing I don't love about it, but I just don't think any of the plays like suing or Kuish that play more tiles here are worth it, just for that benefit of leaving a more favorable number in the bag. So I don't actually mind this. It's the best equity play, which is probably the main reason why Hasty selected it. But I think in this case it's perfectly reasonable too, just to sort of get rid of the tiles that are making his rack difficult to work with, and keep the most flexibility. There's also some possibilities for him to bingo from this C, although it doesn't look that easy with the remaining pull, but he's preserving a strong chance, of course, to bingo on the right with something like sitting, which would pretty much end the game on the spot. So yeah, I think Deuce-I is a perfectly fine play here. I didn't really have a lot of time to think about this play, but I think Ox is pretty clear here. I definitely need to keep my E. It's a very valuable tile, with it being the last one in the pool. Vexed is clearly not a play I want to be making, and styling or something like that is a pretty big threat I want to try to address, or even silting or something like that. So I think just dropping an X here for 27, keeping a flexible leave, and sort of punting it back to HastyBot and seeing what he can make of this is perfectly reasonable here. So here he plays Sig, which looks okay. Definitely not the draw he needed there with 2 more eyes. He's probably correct to try to keep a good bingo leave here. The only problem is there's really not a lot of places for him to bingo, even if he draws a nice lead, a nice rack. Like say he draws TE or DE, I don't even think there's anywhere he'll be able to play bingos, like ignites or dinghies. Neither of those seem to play on this board. So that's the unfortunate thing with this rack, is he can't really score, and his fishes, even if he hits them, don't really play anywhere. I don't think he can afford to play Sis here, just because he'll be emptying the bag, and I really don't think, unless I have like no vowels or something like that, it should be a fairly straightforward endgame for me to win. So I don't think he can do that. He probably does have to just play off SI somewhere. Yeah, I'm just not really seeing a good plan for him if he empties the bag. I mean, he probably has to hope I have no vowels, since if I'm up tempo and I have at least one vowel, I should be able to, I think, either score enough or out in two in a way that's going to allow me to win the game. So it's, I mean, I guess after Ox, it's hard for him to really infer a lot about what I have, since it looks like a strong play with a lot of racks. But I feel like he's probably still best off just playing off two tiles and not emptying the bag. So I think there doesn't seem to be a reason to me not to play Sig if he's going to do that, since it scores the most with playing SI. I don't really see a benefit to playing SI here. It doesn't open any spots for him that are going to score a lot. So it's not a fun play to make, but I think Sig is probably reasonable here. And then, yeah, I was, of course, very fortunate to draw Entwined here. Even if I didn't have this or somehow missed it, I'm probably in decent shape with some other plays. Like Went looks pretty solid here, too. I guess endgames are a little bit difficult to conclude in this case. It really depends a lot. It would depend a lot on whether I draw an out, most likely. But yeah, of course, given I have this bingo, that made things very straightforward. And then, yep, looks like both of us played the best we could at that point. And I was able to go out and win by a score of 465 to 399. So another pretty good game. Definitely a few interesting racks there at various stages in the game. A couple mistakes. I don't feel I played particularly well this game overall. I'm not happy. I'm not happy with Voodoo. Definitely Hooved is something I should be playing, and of course seeing pretty easily there. It's a sizable mistake. It's not a massive mistake, but it's definitely a clear mistake. I think that was one, and then later on when I played Va instead of Ow. This is, I think, even a bigger mistake, just given the point of the game it was. I really didn't give Ow or just dropping off a W as much credit as I should have, just given how it hits with so many tiles in the pool and blocks that spot. So I really think this is actually a bigger mistake than it may seem in the first place. So as I said, I tend to just be averse to one tile fishes because they really signal so much to your opponent and cause them to play very defensively overall, and as a result you end up often not being able to play bingos that you draw after them. But in this case, I think it's just not that obvious to him that I'll be hitting something from the E. There's other places for me to bingo, and it's really just not that easy for him to block this E, right, without giving me back another lane on column B. So in this case, I think my bingo percentage is so large after Ow that it's very likely worth playing. So definitely a bit of a miss there. Not great. I should definitely be able to see that play and think through it during the game and realize how strong it is. But it did work out for me playing Va. I was able to bingo next turn and ultimately win the game. But yeah, so I think those two turns were not great. Hooved was just kind of a miss where I simply didn't see the word in that rack, and then Va was more of a strategical mistake where I clearly thought about putting a W down somewhere or maybe a V. I just didn't really give that idea as much thought as I should have. So another game I feel like I didn't play that well. I'm kind of fortunate to come away with a win, but it was still an interesting game, and I'll take it. And now we are off to a 3-0 start, which is certainly nice. But as I've said before, lots of Scrabble to go, so a lot can still happen. So with that said, I will wrap up this video. Thanks very much to everyone for watching, and as always, check out the other videos on my channel and in this series, and we'll be back very soon with Game 4. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.